This week's US CQM Forecast Alert is, which is the latent true economic growth rate, GDP, GDI, or GDO. These are the economic indicators updated in this week's CQM and PCA forecast. While compensation of employees was revised downward, PCE and residential investment were adjusted upward. Inventory changes in wholesale and retail industries were modified upward. Since statistical discrepancy was large to be minus 545.8 billion in 2021 Q4, large negative figure was forecasted for statistical discrepancy in 2022 Q1. As a result, economic growth on the expenditure side was revised upward to minus 0.77%, and that on the income side was adjusted downward to 0.81%. The gap of economic growth rates between the two sides has narrowed from 3.76% to 1.58%. Regarding inflation, CQM forecast a steady upward trend, suggesting prolonged Biden-inflation. As seen in this table, economic growth rate on both the expenditure and the income side are equal to be 6.3% only at the 2021 Q1. The average absolute gap of economic growth rate between the two sides is as much as 4.8%. We can understand how risky it is to judge the economic situation by focusing on only the expenditure side. It is reasonable for BEA to recommend GDO as a better measurement of economic growth rate. PCA forecast higher economic growth rate and inflation rate than CQM. This is because a decline in March S&P 500 was small, only minus 1.15%, and February PCE price deflator increased 0.6%. Conclusion from this week's CQM Forecast Alert. First, the gap of economic growth rate in 2022 Q1 between the expenditure and income side has narrowed from 3.76% to 1.58%. Second, the average of the absolute gap of the economic growth rate between the two sides in 2020 Q1 to 2021 Q4 was as much as 4.8%. Third, in order to correctly judge the economic situation, it is necessary to focus on both the expenditure and income sides. Fourth, comparing PCA forecast with CQM forecast, financial markets seem to be too pessimistic about inflation but too optimistic about real economy. This slide contains additional information about this week's detailed CQM forecast, the original developer of CQM, and CQM theory papers.